All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I know it's a little different time today, but we had a distance clinic this morning and afternoon, so wasn't able to do office hours at normal time. But if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It should be in there. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet, unless maybe I need to refresh the page. Let me try that. Okay, yeah, refreshed it and still no questions in there. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them in there, and we'll start answering them. If you're on a smaller screen, like a mobile device, it's going to be below the video. If you're on a larger screen, like a desktop or something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. We did have one question that we didn't get answered yesterday. It was posted after the office hours ended, but maybe Ben's on here right now. Ben says, "How do you measure the grip size that would be adequate for you?" Really, it comes down to mainly feel, personal preference. Bryson, Bryson DeChambeau, he uses those big jumbo grips. Well, it's not because he has giant hands. It's just because that's what his personal preference is, right? That's what feels the best for him. So basically, what I would say is any grip that is thick enough that it doesn't move around in your hand and is thin enough that it allows you to be able to kind of move your hands anywhere in that range is going to be completely fine. It's really personal preference beyond that. I've dabbled. I put jumbo grips in my clubs. I put narrower grips in my clubs. I put everything in between on my clubs just to kind of see what it feels like. And to be honest with you, at first it took a little bit of getting used to just kind of the feel and everything of it. But eventually I got used to it, and it really didn't make any difference in my performance. It was more just, what you prefer. So, like I said, anything that is going to be thick enough which is going to be most, unless you have really large hands, most grips are going to be, your standard grip is going to fit almost all people. Unless you have really large hands, a standard grip is not going to be an issue for you. But if you prefer them to be a little bit thicker, then you maybe use like a mid-size grip, or maybe wrap it. You can still use a standard grip, but when you get them fitted, ask them to do a few wraps of the tape underneath, and it thickens the grip a little bit. There's lots of ways to do it, but yeah, that's what I'd recommend. All right, so good. We got a question in here from Joel W. Joel W says, "Hey Q, any tips on hitting a 56 wedge from the fairway? I usually end up taking a huge divot and short of the green, looking for more consistency to get on the green from 50 and 60 yards out." So one thing I would keep in mind is that it may be beneficial for you maybe not to use a 56-degree wedge from that distance unless you absolutely have to. Maybe look into maybe using a 9-iron or a pitching wedge from that distance, because it's going to be easier to hit. The reason why I say that is that wedges, because they have loft on them, they have this sharp leading edge, and the sharp leading edge will tend to make the club want to dig, right? So you have to be a little bit more spot on with where you're hitting the ground in relationship to the golf ball. If you're a little bit off, you get more behind the ball, that club's going to dig. Now, with a pitching wedge, you may get away with that a little bit more. The other thing is when you use a lower lofted club, you don't have to hit it as hard. So there's not as big a swing that you have to take. You don't have to use as much speed. So if you thin it a little bit, it's still going to be fine, right? If you thin a wedge, because you have to hit it with some speed because it has some loft on it, it's going to be you may blade it over the green, right? So that's why that'd be one thing I would consider for sure. Now, as far as the technique is concerned, it sounds to me like you're maybe hitting down on it too much, right? So kind of chopping down on it too much. So I look at your ball position. Now, this is something that I see quite often, is where people get in a situation where they start chunking their wedges, so they keep putting it further back and back and back in their stance. Well, when you do that, you tend to create a more chopping down motion into it, and that's where you're going to get the big divots. And it may help you at first, but eventually you may kind of adapt to it and start falling back and not hit it solid. So you want to have that wedge, somewhere in the middle of the stance, maybe slightly back of the middle. And that's about where you would want it to be. And then the other thing that I would say is you want to make sure that you kind of pivot through the shot, right? You may be picking it up and then just dropping it down all arms, right? So make sure that you're pivoting through. So your hips, and you unlock everything, unlock your hips and your knees, and feel like everything is kind of moving through together. So if this was a little 50, this is actually a 56 degree wedge right here. If I were to be hitting this, I'd take a slightly narrow stance, maybe a few club head widths in between, and that just helps me stay more centered, right? If I do that, I'd lean a little bit forward, right? I'd lean a little bit forward on my lead side, and I would try to kind of keep my weight very centered and a little bit more on my lead foot. And I'm just going to turn my chest back and through, and that's it. I'm actually also going to set up with my body a little bit open, right? So all I'm doing is I'm just going back and through. I'm feeling my body turn back, so I'm turning my chest away, and then turning my chest up. That's all there is really to that shot. If you put it way back in the stance, you're going to tend to need to go like that. If you go too far back in the stance, right, you're going to need to chop down on it, right? If you don't pivot your body back and forth, you're going to tend to come down steep and chop down, take that divot. I don't know if that's exactly what you're doing, but that's what I would look at. So really focus on try to feel like you're keeping your hands in front of your chest and then turning your chest back and through. And you'll find that you'll take much more shallower divots when you do that. You'll more or less just kind of brush the grass when you do that, and you'll get some much better contact. So keep feet a little bit open, right? That's going to help you to turn through, right? Feet close together. It's going to help you to stay more centered and not fall back, but you want to try and feel like you keep your weight forward. Feel like everything kind of goes back and through together. If you want more tips on how to hit your wedges, what I'd recommend doing is checking out our Top Speed Golf wedge system. We actually have a course with a series of drills that will really help you with your wedge game. So if you want to check that out, click the house icon at the top of the screen. That will take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. And then select that Top Speed Golf wedge system and take a look at some of those drills. No problem, Joel. Glad to help. All right, so let's keep the questions coming here. Joel, it might be me and you today. I don't know. So Joel goes on to say, would you be able to elaborate on bounce of the club a bit? Yeah, so what the bounce is, that's this hunk of metal on the bottom of the club, right? So earlier we talked about how this leading edge, this sharp leading edge, will make the club dig a little bit more. Well, this helps combat that. The bounce helps combat that. So generally with that kind of shot, like a 50, 60 yard shot, you're not really going to be using the bounce. It's just going to help. The bounce is just going to help it kind of go through the turf a little bit. Where the bounce is most used, where you're actually going to use it to hit, the ball, or you're not hitting the ball with the bounce, but you're actually going to be hitting the turf with the bounce first. That's going to be like on a bunker shot, right? So you could look at this as the leading edge of this club, the sharp leading edge of this club, almost like the tips of water skis, right? If this leading edge is angled down like that, if my water skis are angled down, where are the water skis going to go? They're going to dive into the water. So when we're hitting out of the sand, if we bring that club in there and we bring this leading edge in there to hit the sand first, if my hand is the sand, then that club is going to want to dig the sand. But if I open up the face, well, look what happens. When I open up the face, that raises the leading edge off of there, right? And if I come in like that and I hit the sand, my leading edge is up. That's like the tips of the water skis being up, and now the water skier can glide on top of the water. Well, that's what we want to have happen when we're coming out of the sand. We want that club to glide through the sand, and we want the sand to propel the ball up out of the water. So that's really what the bounce is mainly used for. Now you can kind of do that on turf if you're hitting like a flop kind of shot, but that's a high degree of difficulty shot. You have to have a specific lie for that to be able to make that work. But generally, and you can use it for some kind of chip shots and things like that. But for the most part, that bounce is mostly for the sand and to help this club glide through the turf and not continue to dig down into the turf. All right, so let's keep going. So Will F says on pitches, flops when the fairways are almost non-existent, I tend to blade more than trying to use the bounce. Should I hit down on the ball more in these types of shots? So a couple things you can do. Like I said earlier with Joel, what I would recommend doing, I would consider not using a wedge. I would consider using a lower lofted club. I would consider using, like a pitching wedge because it's just going to be easier to hit. You don't have to hit it as hard, and it's typically going to be a higher percentage shot for most people. These days I don't get to practice a lot. I don't play as much as I used to, and I don't practice near as much as I used to either. So my skill level as it pertains to my wedge game and ability to control things isn't as good as it used to be, right? I used to be able to kind of do pretty much whatever I wanted around the greens with a wedge. I could control, there weren't a lot of shots that I couldn't really hit. Whereas for me now, if I'm playing a really tight fairway, I tell you what, the Bermuda that they saw at the Hero World Challenge, in the Bahamas, that was some grainy Bermuda, and you saw a lot of tour players taking fairway woods out and chipping with fairway woods because you have to be so precise with where that club is hitting the ground, and it's really not much different when you're hitting off of a bare lie because there's no cushion underneath the golf ball, right? When the ball is sitting up on some grass, there's some cushion there that your club can get underneath of and be able to hit the ball. But when you're hitting off of a bare lie, there's no cushion there, right? So your club just kind of comes in and it either digs in or bounces off and you blade it. So I would consider taking a lower lofted club and kind of trying to brush it off of there. If you're in that kind of situation, because it's just going to be a higher percentage shot. But other than that, you just have to be more. Precise with how it's just a higher degree of difficulty shot, right? It's just like hitting out of the sand versus hitting out of a fairway, right? In the sand, it's almost like it's very similar to hitting off of an extremely bare lie. It's not hitting out of the sand is a little bit more difficult than that, but it's very similar in the sense that if I hit any sand, if I'm hitting out of a fairway bunker, right, I don't have any margin for error, right? I have to make ball first contact. If I hit 2 inches behind the golf ball, I'm hitting it fat. If I'm hitting off a bare line, I hit 2 inches off the golf ball, depending on how hard or soft the turf is, if it's hard turf, my club's going to bounce off of it and I'm going to blade it. If it's really soft bare lie, then my club's going to dig in and I'm going to chunk it, right? So I don't have that cushion underneath the golf ball for the club to just glide through. So it's just a higher degree of difficulty shot, and you can make it easier on yourself by taking less loft. That leading edge just wants to dig, and it wants to bounce. Depending on the turf, right? So you got be a higher degree of difficulty shot in most situations. So Will S says, thanks, you confirmed I was thinking about this correctly. Sometimes I would listen to my instincts. Sometimes I should listen to my instincts instead of just doing what worked in a previous round. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, not all, a lot of playing golf and playing good golf, of course, is about assessing the lie. And that's one thing that you can't really practice on the range. You're not very well anyway. I mean, you can kind of do it a little bit if you have a grass range, but if you're hitting off of a mat, you're definitely not, because you're getting a perfect lie every single time, right? So yeah, part of that is assessing the line. You're like, okay, I don't have any grass underneath this ball. This is going to be really difficult for me to hit pretty well. So what I need to do is I need to make this easier on myself, maybe take a little bit less loft and maybe try to bounce it up there. Pick a spot to bounce it. Or, if there's green to work with, maybe I kind of let hit it on there and let it run on there, right? And I'm gonna take the kind of take the swing that's gonna match that. Yeah, so yeah, definitely need to trust your instincts sometimes. If you feel really uncomfortable over the ball, get a club in your hand that's going to help you feel comfortable, right? That's going to help you to, because if you're hitting that shot with an 8-iron instead of a wedge, you're more than likely not to chunk it, or the club's going to dig, because it just doesn't have the leading edge on it, the sharp leading edge on it that's going to want to dig on it. All right, so keep it coming here. All right. So Will F, sorry about that. You had another question. Will F says, on driver club head speed, why is it that I can generate more speed when fixing the lead arm against my body and letting my big muscles pull arms through than when I try to swing from the top position? Let me read that again. Why is it that I can generate more speed when fixing the lead arm against my body and letting the big muscles pull arms through than when trying to swing from the top position? I'm not sure what you mean swing from the top position, but when we look at tour players, what they're doing, well, one thing I would say is you're more than likely not actually swinging with your lead arm fixed to your body. Because if you really did that, that would not be very fast, right? If I have my lead arm on my body, your lead arm is definitely coming off of your body some, but you're probably turning into your lead arm. So if I go up to the top, so one thing that the camera kind of makes, because you're looking at things in 2D, the camera will kind of make things look a little bit different sometimes. A lot of times they say, the picture doesn't lie or camera doesn't lie. It can a little bit. It can misinform you because it's 2D, it's not 3D, right? So when we look at players, when we look at tour players, it often looks like they're taking their lead arm and they're putting it way across their chest like this, right? So they go to the top and it looks like they're way across their chest, like they're doing this, right, to get to the top of the swing. But in reality, they're really just kind of going like that. Their lead arm isn't really getting too far this way, not across their chest like this. I always forget which is called. I know one's adduction and one's abduction. I can't remember which one. One's where you pull your arm closer, one's where you pull your arm further away. But it looks like they're basically putting their arm against their chest, when in reality, what they're really doing is they're just getting a big turn, right? So they're turning, and then their arm is kind of more out in front of their chest. And then when they start the downswing, so they're more like here, right? Then when they start their downswing, they actually turn into their arm. So in the downswing, the lead arm goes against the chest. And then when they come in to impact, the arm explodes off of the chest as they're coming through. And that is a speed kind of thing. So that's more than likely what's going on, is that you're going up to the top and then you're turning into your lead arm, and then your lead arm's coming off. Whereas if you go up here and let's say you don't have an arm and you just throw your arms out away from you, well, that's not going to be as fast. So if you turn into your arm and then propel your arm off of your chest with your turn, then that creates more speed. I'm guessing that's what's going on, but I would look on video and actually see what's going on, because I will say right now there's a very low chance, I mean, just based on the information that you're giving me, that you're actually keeping your arm on your chest when you come into contact. That's not really probably what's happening. Your arm is definitely going from, so here's the address, then I go up to the top of the swing, right? It's going to be somewhere in that area. And then into transition, my arm will go like that. And then at impact, my arm will go like that. So I'm getting some extra speed, some oomph from that. So Will S says, thanks. My slice tendency is also gone now. All the little things you have taught me have added up to dramatic improvements. That's great to hear, Will. Glad to hear that your slice is gone. That definitely makes things a lot easier if you can keep the ball in play for sure. So good deal. Glad to hear it's been helping. Hey, we had a clinic this morning and afternoon, so haven't had a chance to attend to our ball striking masterclass Facebook group. So I'll be, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll just be kind of using my office hours to work on that, to kind of catch up here a little bit. So Joe W says, thanks again, Q. Love everything you guys are doing at TSG. Enjoy the rest of your day. No problem, Joel. Glad to help. I'm glad you're enjoying everything that we do here. Yeah, hopefully you can always come here for if you have any questions or anything. I'm guessing the new time, people just aren't used to the new time. Well, I mean, it's just a new time for this week. We usually do this at 11 a.m., but unfortunately today wasn't able to do it at that time. All right. So John S has a question. John S says, anxious to get to the indoor range and work on the pedal motion footwork. It's freezing cold here up north, but I'm getting my money's worth with my impact snap. Yeah, the impact snap is awesome for indoor. If any of you are on here not familiar with what the impact snap is, that's this little guy right here. This is great for working on things indoors because you don't really have to have much space. And it really helps you get the feeling of how your hands and arms should work, and also how your body should sync with it, because it's got this little slider in here. And if I do this correctly, I'll get that to snap out here, right? So if I if I get here and I just throw my arms, it snaps right here, right? But if I get here and I actually rotate, right, it snaps out here. So it's a good way to kind of get your arms and your body synced up. And we have some drills on the website that you can work with the Impact Snap. But Impact Snap actually has an awesome, I forget the pro's name that kind of does all the drills for them. But he's got some awesome drills on there that I recommend for people. So I think they've done a really good job with this product. It's a high quality product too. You ain't gonna break it. So if you want to check it out, you can go to impactsnap.com, or I believe it's impactsnap.com. And you can use promo code C Ballard, C as in Clay. So C Ballard, and yeah, Marty Nowicki. Yes, that's his name. For some, I knew it was Marty, but I knew the last name was something like that, but I didn't want to butcher it. Thanks, John. But anyway, yeah, awesome training aid. And if you're not familiar with how this kind of works, basically, it's got the snap in here, right? So we can get the slide it down, so you get the snap feeling, right? And then it's also got this arm that comes off here with this ball. So what that does is that gives you an indication you want to get this to touch your trail arm. And that gives you an indication if you are squaring up the face when you're getting the hands in front at impact. So look at my trail wrist condition, right? And look at my lead wrist condition. That's putting me in the right place here at impact, right? So look here, I have a flat, slightly bowed lead wrist, and then I have a extended back trail wrist, right? And that's what I need to have. If I come into impact and I flip, right, and I have a cupped lead wrist, right, and my trail wrist is in a flat position, look at where that arm there, that ball is. It's not on my lead arm. So it's giving me the feedback, okay, am I getting this on there? And if you really want to exaggerate this, you can get it to go above the arm, in between the arms as you're coming through, right? You can actually try to get it on this arm a little bit. And that can really, really help to exaggerate that feeling that you need to have to get it to get the face squared up and to get the hands in front. So it's a good thing to work on. You can fit it in your suitcase, have it around the office, but it's a good thing to have. So if you go to impactsnap.com, C Ballard is the promo code. I believe you can get 10% off, something like that. So if you're just joining us, I'm just waiting for some questions to be asked. So if you got a question, go ahead and post it on there. If not, you can watch me try to get some work done. right, we got a question here from Marty, or sorry, from John S. Uh, John S says, "How important is visualization in the game? It seems that this can be used with swing keys and just visualization, and not just visualization." Sorry, I can't read today. It seems that this can be used with swing keys and not just visualizing ball flight. I think visualization is extremely important. If you have to kind of have a sense and feel for what's going on. If you're just hitting and hoping, you know, that's a recipe for disaster. If you're just hoping that it goes straight. So you want to develop a sense and feel for what kind of swing produces a certain ball flight. So, Tiger always talks about, you know, hitting to the picture or putting to the picture. Is something his dad taught him is, visualize what's going on, and then you want to perform the action to match the picture, right? So if you have to visualize in order to do that, right? So whenever I'm getting behind a shot, I'm actually, and that's what feed forward technique is. It's a visualization technique, right? And that's what you should be doing before every single shot. You should be imagining what it's going to sound like, right? What it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what the ball flight's going to look like. Where is it going to land? Where is it going to roll out after it lands? And you're taking in all the information around you with your environment to also do that. So if I'm behind the ball, I'm looking, okay, I got right to left wind. If I hit a little draw, it's going to turn a little bit more than maybe it would. So I might aim it a little bit more over here. So I'm just trying to match my body and basically match the picture, right? Hit to the picture, putt to the picture. Same thing. I think hitting putts is a very, very similar kind of thing. You need to visualize where that ball is going to start, where it's going to curve, and how much speed it's going to have when it goes in the hole. What angle is it going to go in the hole? Because if it's a breaking putt, it's not going. It's not going to be going in the front, right? Well, it might if you catch the lip, right? But it's going to be coming. If it's making it dead center, it's going to be coming in from the side a little bit, right? So that's kind of the what you want to do, what you want to work through, when you're doing this. So yeah, visualization is really, really important. It doesn't mean that there's no swing keys involved. It just means that you need to visualize what's going on. There may be a swing key that you need to have in order to do that, right? So that's really what it comes down to. Visualization is super, super important. And that's what feed forward technique is. You're visualizing what it is, what it's going to sound like, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what's the ball flight going to look like up in the air, all that stuff. So yes, I highly recommend that you visualize your shots. You've seen, one thing that they showed a lot of when Jason Day was, one of the best players in the world. He's still a great player, but when he was like the number one player in the world, they would always kind of zoom in on him, and he would kind of be closing his eyes, and you kind of open them, and he was visualizing it. Now, you don't need to be that dramatic, but it's kind of it's a similar kind of thing. Sorry, my shirt got untucked, so I'm just tucking it back in. All right, so Serge has a question here. So Serge says, does pushing off lead leg starts the downswing, or a combination of both the arms coming down and the legs gets engaged? So you're going to be pushing off of that. Yeah, so pushing off the lead leg is part of what starts the downswing. So we want to push off the trail leg, and then we get pressure into the lead leg, and that starts everything coming down. If you're starting the arms down before you get pressure into the lead leg, then it's too late. You're going to be casting, flipping, throwing the club in front. Now you can hit fine shots doing that, but you're going to struggle with consistency. You're going to chunk. You're going to thin. You may slice. You may pull. You're going to have trouble because you're doing everything with upper body. So you get here, right? So I'm putting pressure into the trail side. That's propelling my arms back. And then I'm going to push. I'm going to get pressure into the lead side, and that gets everything starting down for my downswing. So what we want to understand is that the force that you put into the ground precedes the movement of the club, right? So what that means is I go pressure right, club moves back. Pressure left, club moves forward. Right? That's what we want to do. So we kind of do this in the lag series of the Toss Golf lag series. There's a lag progression where you kind of get the sense of the club kind of going back and forth, right? So that's what we want to do in the golf swing. In the golf swing, we want to shift pressure here, and then the club swings that way. We're going to put pressure here, club swings that way. So that's kind of that change of direction. That's what gets the club kind of lagging behind. So if I go here and then I get the pressure and I start throwing the club that way and then I put the pressure there, well, it's too late. I'm going to cast the club. If I'm here and then I go like this, well, I'm already throwing the club in front of my body. I'm going to be out of sequence and I'm going to throw the club. I'm going to early release. So it's got to be pressure here. And then that allows you to actually get the force in the ground that's necessary to get everything unwinding in the proper sequence. All right, so we got a couple more questions here. So Bill H says, can you go over the tennis racket drill to help shallow the club? Yeah, if you have any specific questions about the tennis racket drill, let me know. But I mean, I'm not going to tell you anything that's different than what's in the video that you can just go to the move and watch. But what we're doing with the tennis racket, the whole reason why you use a tennis racket is because it's a much better visual of where the face is, right? So if I grip the tennis racket like this is like the club face pointing toward the target. I'm not going to miss that, right? I'm going to have a very good sense of where that is. So a lot of times, this is what we need to pay attention to is what the face and the club head are doing, because we want to get that in the position to be able to kind of whip it through, right? So if this is out of position, then we're going to tend to make compensations to make that happen. So that's why we use the tennis racket, because it helps you visualize, okay, where is the face at this point in time in the swing, right? So that's why we use the tennis racket. So you start out with it in front of you, and then you go up to the top of the swing, and then in the start of the downswing, we're going to be doing two moves with the wrists here. With the lead wrist, or with the wrists, with both wrists, we're going to have the sensation that we're turning a doorknob to the right. So when I do that, that gets the strings pointed more up to the sky, and that's what shallowing out the club is, right? So if I get it here and I get the club more behind me, now I can rotate through. If I have it here, right, if I have the club straight up and down, well, if I'm here and the club straight up and down, well, if I keep going, I'm going to swing over the top. If I stay in my posture and I don't early extend, right, I'm going to swing way over the top. I'm going to hit a big slice, pull hook, wherever there's a lot of bad shots you can hit from that position. Or what better players typically do when they're coming down steep is they will stand up. They have early extension. Well, now look, that club head gets behind me, so now I can throw it through, and I can actually hit a functional golf shot. But the problem with that is that I have to flip. Right? I have to add loft, and the other problem with that is that it's very inconsistent because my club, you can kind of overdo it. If you're here and then you stand up, now the club's away inside, and you can get the club working too much inside and end up with a snap hook, right? And it also makes your turf interference not your turf interaction, excuse me, not as good because the club's going to come in more toe down, and you're going to be hitting the ground more with the toe, and you're going to tend to hit thin shots when you do that. All right, so that's why we want to get it more behind you, so that way now it's on plane, I can just turn through, right? And then the other thing we want to do is do this with our lead wrist. So that's a bowing, right? So that's bowing of the lead wrist. And I also want to extend back my trail wrist. I put that together, and it's like that. What that does is that squares up the face. So when I turn through and I get my hands ahead of the ball at impact, I have to do this to square up the face. If I come into contact and I have the same wrist angles, right, look, that face is wide open. So I have to turn that face down. Well, if you're coming in down here, let's say you got the club shallowed out, you turned the doorknob to the right, you got the club shallowed out, and then you're coming in like this, well, that face is wide open. So what you're typically going to do is you're going to flip the club. You're going to move away and flip the club to square it up. You're going to go like this because at a short period of time, that's all you can really manage to do. It's very, very difficult from this kind of position coming down to get to there. I mean, you're talking about from there to impact. I mean, it's a split second. It's a very, very small amount of time. You don't have time to do that. So the only thing you can really do is pull up and throw the club. That's what you can do in that amount of time. So that's why we want you to go up here and get the club shallowing out and get the face squaring up earlier, right? So now if I go up here and I go like this, and I'll show you it from the other angle. So by lead arm parallel, I've got this club shallowed out. So the butt end of the club is pointing more outside the golf ball. I've got this face squaring up, and now from here, I can just turn through. I'll show you it from the other angle. If I go up here, and I get the face squaring up, so you can see it's pointing more out away from me. I've got this club shallowed out. Now from here, I can turn through and be at impact with a square face and shaftling, right? And I'm just ripping through the ball as opposed to making all sorts of compensations later on in the swing. So that's basically, what the tennis racket drill is. If you have any more specific questions on that, I'll be happy to help you, but you can always find the tennis racket drill video in the move course. You can get the move course by clicking the instruction tab at the top of the screen, then go to the Toxic Golf System, go to the move, and it's 1.3, I think, is the tennis racket drill. So John S says, do you need to reestablish flex in the right knee right away if you straighten it going back? I noticed that I tend to keep it straight during my weight shift, and I think this is a flaw. Yeah, so you're going to be. So what we don't want to do is go up to the top of the swing, keep it straight, and then never ever flex it down, right? So we're straightening it out to get a good turn. And then as we're coming down, right, we're going to be squatting back down into it, right? So it's not like you go here and then you go back. It's a fairly gradual thing. So I'm here, I've straightened it out, and I'm starting my downswing. I've basically turned my hips back to square, right? And my lead arm is going to be about parallel to the ground when I do that. So hips back to square, lead arm about parallel to the ground, and then from there I'm turning through. So either from this angle, I'm here, hips back to square, lead arms parallel, and then you turn through. So, like I said, you're going to be going here, and then as you are getting up to the top of your swing, just to go into this a little bit more, as you're going up to the top of your swing, you should be already pushing your weight to your lead side. Right? So I'm here, I'm maxing out, I'm stretching that out, and me straightening out my leg is me pushing my weight to my lead side. And then from there, I'm here, and then I'm up and through. So we got about 10 minutes left. No problem, John. Glad to help. So John S says, did you hit some bombs and show them how it's done at the distance clinic? I like your swing in the instructional videos. Thanks. I hit a couple bombs before anybody got there, but we definitely got some guys hitting some bombs for sure. Had one guy crack his driver face. He was swinging so hard. Yeah, it's the first time we've had somebody crack their driver. Probably just not used to the club head speed he was getting. But yeah, we had a few guys make some awesome gains for sure. One guy, I think he got like 15 miles per hour. Went from what was it? About 85 to 100, I think. Yeah, so definitely got some guys swinging much better. Cracking a driver face sounds sick. I mean, if it's not your driver, it sounds pretty good. But yeah, I guess they give you an excuse to buy a new driver. I suppose if I don't know what the warranty situation is on those, but I imagine a lot of times they'll replace it if the driver face cracks. Cracked one once, but it was an old one. I just wanted to get a new one anyway, so I didn't ask them to replace it. All right. Well, we only got a couple, maybe like 1 minute or two left. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. Everybody have a great rest of the day. I'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, same time, 3 p.m. And I'll talk to you next time. Take care.